Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are listening. Welcome to this week's edition of What Caught My Eye, where we wrap up and discuss the most eye-catching events from the sporting world from this past week. Thanks for joining us on our foray into the world of constructive sports discussion and education. I'm Nick Vesci, your host, and with me, as always, is the boy Stephen Vesci and the man Stephen Komlo. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and X at WCME_sports. If you are watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell for updates and alerts on future episodes. And as a reminder, you can listen to this podcast on Spotify. New shows drop every Wednesday. We've got a great show for you this week, so let's get into it. Our top story, or the number one thing that caught our eye this week, happened to come from the world of college basketball, and we're talking about the men's and women's Final Four. Before we get into it, just a quick congratulations to the University of South Carolina women who took home the national championship after an undefeated season, and the University of Connecticut men who took home their second straight national championship, becoming the first to do it in back-to-back years since the 06-07 Florida Gators. Now, without further ado, boys, let's get our thoughts on the women's championship and Final Four. Steven Vesci, the boy, I know you got a hot take. Let's get right into that. And he's been hot about this all week. His hot take is stemming from the UConn women, Iowa women semifinal game.
Yeah, we have to talk about the end of the game. I mean, you can't miss it.
Yes. Well,
that moving screen.
Okay, before we get to the end, we don't want to make that the defining part of this game, because if you did watch it, it was a fantastic basketball game. It was back and forth. It had runs going up and back, coaching errors, coaching adjustments that were brilliant, in our opinion. But at the end of the day,
I'm not saying that defined the game at all.
Setting the stage, though, was the end.
Yeah.
So at the end of the game, you've got Iowa up, 2, I believe?
Iowa's up 2, UConn with the ball with, I think it was like 8 seconds left or 10 seconds left, something like that.
Yep.
And Gino runs a play to get Paige a 3 to win the game. And the moving screen call bothered me, not because, like, if you look at it, by definition, technicality, it's a foul, right? It's a moving screen. She leans. It's a foul. By definition, that is a moving screen foul. However, you can call a moving screen at any point in any game.
Yes.
And they decide to call it there, which means they're looking for it. That's one of the biggest issues I have, because no way they're actually, like, that ref's going, oh, that's a moving screen. If you looked at it in live real time, that looks fine. No one would bat an eye at that.
I will say, I don't know if you noticed, that same girl on UConn earlier in the game.
She did get called for another one.
She got called for one, and she set one that didn't get called, where she straight up ran through the girl right in front of Iowa's bench, and their bench went crazy, and it was missed. So I wonder if those preceding events... No, just that was in the back of the ref's mind. But I agree with you that a charge offensive foul call is the only foul in basketball that is subjective. Yeah. Any other foul, by definition, you could show a clip and it's always 100% a foul, whereas a charge or player control foul or offensive foul is always up for interpretation by the referee. And so, like you're saying, the issue is that official had to have been sitting there either looking for it, and my issue is it's not so much that you can argue whether it's right or wrong. It's an issue of mindset. The official has to know what's going on at that time in the game. They have to know game situation just as the players. And to me, this stems all the way back to their training, how they are evaluated, how it's reinforced, because that all is about mindset. As we've done, us here have been officials before. The biggest thing is you get the obvious, right? And you have to understand kind of like what's going on in the game, and that knowing what you miss and what you don't. And like if you miss if that call is never made, no one mentions it.
No one cares.
That is an issue.
I've seen people say, oh, if they don't call that and Paige Beckers makes it, everyone's looking at that as controversial.
No.
Like, no one saw it until you slowed down the clip. Like, wow, look how wide she is. She's leaning.
A little bit.
She's leaning. Like every single screen in every single game, you could probably call a moving screen.
Yes, and that's why and to know to call a moving screen, even I think at any point in time in the game, it has to be super clear and obvious and egregious. You can't, because if you, like you said, if you did that, you could slow it down and maybe this person moved a little, and you'd just be blowing whistles the whole time.
Yeah.
So that's
and
where my thing is. It's mindset.
Right. My biggest issue with that is you're looking for it.
Yes.
Why are you looking for that in that situation?
Correct.
It has to be like someone had to tell you, watch this, like, or you decided we got to get Clark to the freaking championship. But what I wanted to see was that was a great game. I want to see the finish.
Yes.
That's
the other issue with it is that
you saw
by
the end of
making
the
that
game. You saw the finish.
by making that foul call, it took the final say out of the players' hands. That's the issue. We want the players to always decide the outcome of a game. And obviously you can't point one play and say this decided this or this isn't, right? You know, UConn took the high road and they're exactly right. That one play doesn't define the game. We had plenty of chances to win. However, when it's all said and done and you're trying to write the final chapter in a great epic game, you want the players on the court to make the final decision, write the ending to it. And unfortunately, we didn't have that.
There's also one thing that no one's talked about for this was Paige Beckers and how she ran off the screen. She has to set her man up better. No, for some reason, no one's. That's like basketball 101. You set your man up for the screen, and she didn't do a good enough job, and that's why she had to lean.
I agree.
If she sets her up better, she probably doesn't have to move as much. No, they probably don't call it, and if they do, then everyone's like, "Wow, that's terrible." But then she comes off the screen. That was something that she did all night though. She wasn't getting open. She wasn't using the screens to get open all night, and that was. I mean, we've gone back and forth with this, Nick, about who outcoached who. I think Gino's defensive game plan was perfect. However, I think was it Bluter? Is that the coach for Iowa?
Bluter.
Yeah, I think her offensive game plan and her defensive game plan were great. She got the ball into Clark's hand every single time down the floor. That was something UConn didn't do with Paige. I know they have other weapons, but at the end of the day, it's the Final Four. To advance, you have to get the ball into your best player's hand every single time down the court. And Iowa did that, and they won.
Yep. And I think that's a great way to move into that championship game. Before we get into the championship game of Iowa versus South Carolina, I do want to point out, I don't know if you saw, after that offensive foul call was made, Iowa's taking the ball out underneath their basket with like 1 second left, and Caitlin Clark threw the ball off of, I think it was Becker's leg, and had it roll out of bounds. And that is an incredibly brilliant play on so many levels, because first off, you have to recognize where you are. If she does that in her own backcourt underneath her basket, it doesn't help you because you lose the ability to run the baseline, or you lose space on the court, right? But doing it underneath your own basket, there is zero risk involved, with especially the time left, because what's the worst case scenario? The girl turns around, picks the ball up before it goes out of bounds, and throws in a full court shot that goes in. It's not going to happen. Technically, it's possible, but it won't happen. So it's brilliant because that ball could have bounced and rolled and stayed in play, and the game would have been over. That was a fantastic play. It got lost in the shuffle of that egregious call.
I didn't see it because I was in a Scotch-fueled rage at that point. After that call.
Lord.
But the Caitlin Clark play, even Jordan brought it up. She asked me about the end. Did you see this? And I was like, well, what part you're talking about? And she said that when that girl threw it off the UConn player, and I was like, yeah, I saw that. Fantastic, unbelievably brilliant play. And that's part of the brilliance of Caitlin Clark. Now getting into the championship game was Iowa versus South Carolina. Rematch from last year. They met in the tournament. Iowa eliminated South Carolina before they got to the championship. South Carolina, coached by Dawn Staley from
Virginia,
entered the game undefeated, playing against Caitlin Clark, multiple-time Wooden Award winner, arguably the greatest, college basketball player ever. And as we said earlier, South Carolina came out on top. It was a true team victory. And you talked about the coaching strategies in the previous semifinal. I thought Dawn Staley's strategy in this game was impeccable. If you noticed, and I don't know if you picked this up on Caitlin Clark, she kind of has a pattern. Right? If she goes left, she's always going to step back to pull up for a three. She goes right, she's trying to hit a floater from the box. From the block.
So I'm going to talk about that as a shooter.
As a shooter, I understand why, but when you get to this level, someone like Dawn Staley 100% noticed that. And so if you notice, when they were playing defense, every on-ball defender on Caitlin Clark forced her right, had her hand up, stopping her from going left, made her go right and use a pick and roll. Because they said if you use that pick and roll, we know what you're going to do. You're going to do two things. You're going to try to make the pocket pass to the big, and we've got bigs that can defend it, and our help defense is going to be great. You're going to try to hit that floater over us. And our bigs, again, are great. They're bigger. It's going to be the more difficult shot. And so they forced her that the whole game. And what was brilliant is Dawn Staley didn't sit there and say, we have to limit how many points Caitlin Clark scores. She said, we have to limit what the other people around her do. So we'll take away the pocket pass. We'll take away the kickouts to the wide open threes. And we'll force her right. We will not let her take a step back three because we will trade twos with her all day. We will be more efficient on the offensive end because we have better offensive rebounders. We have better playmakers across the board to get to the hoop, that we will score more efficiently than she will if we force her right. And at the end of the day, that is exactly what happened. And I thought it was freaking brilliant. She's a Hall of Famer for a reason. They went undefeated for a reason. They were the better team, better game plan, better execution all year.
It was that game. I mean, I missed it live because I was going to the Caps game, which is something else. Not the Caps game, but the scheduling. I think is something we need to get into. But I went back and watched it, and South Carolina's execution of their game plan is flawless. I mean, even if you just look at it on paper, Iowa 9 offensive rebounds, and South Carolina, I think, more than tripled up on that.
Yes.
Their offensive rebounds were nuts. They were owning everything coming off of the steal and the glass. It's staggering. I had a buddy text me while I was walking into Capital One, kind of shit-talking Iowa and Caitlin Clark a little bit. And he was like, oh, I thought they were supposed to be great. And I was like, it looks like they're just kind of... South Carolina's just dominating them inside. I can tell just by looking at the box score here. The rebounds alone are winning South Carolina the game. Their bigs are huge.
Yes.
Those are some big bigs for
Cardoso 6'7".
6'7",
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, she's
effective too.
She's really athletic and really good. Like there was the second that matchup, I mean, this year, once that matchup was the final, like for the championship, it was like, I don't know how I was gonna win because of those bigs. Like it's gonna be a struggle.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, at least in my opinion, the team in a team sport wins out over the individual. And what you saw there, and when we get into the men's championship here in a second, they're kind of mirror images. It was the individual versus the team, and the game plans were similar from the defensive standpoints. Hurley and Staley, in terms of what they were going to do with the best player, right? These are multiple-time Wooden Award winners. How are we going to beat this team? And the thing was, they didn't look at it that way. They looked at, our team is better than your team.
Yeah, and let the star do the thing and then neutralize everything else.
Yes, yep. And so, again, just to recap, South Carolina, undefeated season. Congratulations to them.
What a feat.
What a fantastic.
I think they've lost one game in 2 years.
Was that to Iowa last year?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
Isn't that insane? That's an incredible record. So congratulations to them.
Yeah, Dawn Staley needs to be talked about more. Like I understand because we had Clark and Beckers, and we had like the superstar power, and South Carolina had the big was their star, so they didn't get talked about as much. But that team it's a wagon. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I got one more thing before we move on, because I get the feeling we're about to move on to men's.
Yes, we are.
One more thing. Last week, I had a take where I said, "Oh, everyone wants to see Iowa and LSU. Everyone wants to see Iowa LSU. It's going to put up record numbers, and nobody's going to watch afterwards." Holy shit, was I wrong? It's insane, and I could not be more happy that I'm wrong about this. They reached a peak viewership. The championship game, Iowa, South Carolina, they reached a peak viewership of over 28 million concurrent viewers. That's nuts, and that's their peak. So obviously, but if you want to talk average, I think they were pulling around the number was 18 million average. We're watching it any one time, and then it peaked at 28 mil. It's insane, and it makes me so happy to see that. If I'm being honest, right?
Should we call you Steven? I have egg on my face, Komlo. Now, are you no longer the man?
It's not the man with egg, I guess. I love eggs. Can I offer
Can I interest you in an egg? Took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, it was a bad take. It didn't age well, and I'll wear it.
Yep. Now again, moving on to the men's, we just kind of alluded to it. The Final Four, we had UConn handle business against Bama, and Purdue handle business against NC State. That it's not like they were horrible games, but you knew who the dominant team was. They advanced pretty handily, and that set up this great matchup. UConn versus Purdue. You got the first time since Ewing and Olajuwon met in the championship game that you had two 7-footers playing against each other in Donovan Clingan and Zach Edey, right? And so you had all the great storylines. Purdue looking for the ultimate redemption after losing in the first round to Fairleigh Dickinson as a 16 last year. You got UConn going for back-to-back. It set up great. And the first half of that game was one of the best played first halves I've seen in a while. It was Everyone was efficient offensively. There weren't bad mistakes. There were no bad calls. Nothing that stood out to me, like maybe 1 or 2 missed calls.
I mean, ask Dan Hurley, though. He'll say otherwise.
We played like shit.
Yeah.
There's a bad call here, there's a bad call. He's jumping out on the floor.
Well,
like,
that's part of his shtick.
Yeah,
I don't know shtick, but like it's him. Like it's who he is unapologetically, which is why they're successful. So I thought the first half was great, but the second half, what we saw was the way they defended Zach Edey was very similar to how they defended South Carolina defended Caitlin Clark. Right? We know you're going to get the ball, you can go over your left shoulder. It's going to happen. That was pretty much his go-to move, what he kept doing. And we're going to use our bigs, Clingan, and let's not forget Samson. Was it Samson Johnson? Is that his name? The other big that came in. He played fantastic against Edey for UConn because he was a change of pace. It was almost like a change of pace back. They pounded Edey with Clingan to Clingan out, threw the quick back in like you would do a little Ron Dane, Tiki Barber action. And Samson Johnson was running circles around Edey, tired him out. And, he wound up fouling out of the game, but he did his job. And his job was to make it hard on Edey and the rest of the defense protect that three-point line. I mean, Purdue, I think they made 1 3 that game, maybe
they
2.
Did. They went 1 for 7. That's it.
Yeah, and that's not a lot of shots either. And it's because they didn't have any looks. There were no looks. And anytime Edey got double-teamed, which they only did a few times, but that was like a change of pace. Yeah, they double-teamed when Clingan wasn't in. Change of pace, kind of discombobulated Purdue, and they couldn't get their looks because their UConn's help defense was so good. So the defensive strategy was, you know what? If Zach Edey scores 80 points and beats us, he scores 80 points and beats us. But he ain't going to score 80 points. And he scored, almost 40?
37. Yeah,
37,
yeah.
Right? And, fantastic effort, but it was in a losing effort. And that's what UConn was like, okay, we'll let that happen. And we think that it's, we're going to run him. He'll get tired. He plays the whole time. Everything's on his shoulders because we'll take away any open threes. And we'll trade 2s and 3s. And we will be more efficient than them offensively, and that's what won them the game.
One of the biggest keys was running him. I know Hurley, every interview, he was asked, was it the first half interviews, he was like, we need to run him. Get
the announcers remarked upon it a couple times, too. Yeah. When they went, I think, 3 or 4 times up and down the court without a whistle, you could see, hands on the hips, high post.
I mean, he's trying to get 7-4 and 3 whatever.
Well, to that point too, though. Obviously, a big headline for this game was, we have 2 7-footers going against each other. Oh my god! And then Clingan gets into foul trouble in the second half, and I would bet money that the casual viewer was like, oh, Edey's about to close the gap and gain a lead here, because Clingan isn't in to guard him. But that was not the case. I mean, Dan Hurley's squad executed this game plan to perfection, right?
Something
you would expect. Dan Hurley pregame said something to the effect of, Zach Edey's gonna get his. That's fine. We're gonna make him battle for his meal, and nobody else on that team is gonna eat.
Yeah, take away his left shoulder. Because that's what he had one great up and under, and I'm surprised he didn't try to do that more.
That was an awesome move.
I was thinking that too. Why did he not do anything else? I don't know if he was too tired or what, but he made that move. Well, he made that move, and it's like, why not go back to that well a couple more times? Because you do it once, it's great. Well, he never went back to it, so they never were threatened by it.
Correct. Yeah, and there was something I wanted, I was looking at pregame of how they were going to attack Purdue's defense, how UConn was. and it was exactly what I thought they were going to do. They played Klingon and Spencer and Newton in that same two-man high ball screen, and Purdue doesn't hedge because you can't with Edie. You can't hedge the screen. So you have a free run at the basket to either get to the rim, alley-oop it to Klingon, or shoot an 8-foot floater. Pretty high percentages there. So that's how they started. That's how they attacked him to start, and I think it got Edie has to run and play defense now more because of that being successful. Now he's got to move out a little bit more. He's got to keep coming out, and it's just he got tired.
Yeah.
And I mean, we talked about it last week. Just like what a squad UConn is. I mean, you got to think that in a tournament where they're putting up record different point differentials and they're blowing teams out, that like a game that's that close at the half, they're you would think that most teams would probably like sweat a little bit, right? Like, oh, they're like actually testing our mettle. Hell no. They tweaked their game plan just ever so slightly at the half and came out and just went right back to the grindstone. And the conditioning on that team is insane.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone else is running around the perimeter, running around the floor, and then they're still able to pull up and just hit just dimes. It's wild.
It also helped that fairly deep. You're playing 7, 8 guys, whereas Purdue, it felt like it was 5 guys out there. There might have been a 6th guy who came out there, but Klingon sat for most of the second half, and they had the luxury because of guys like Caravan and Samson Johnson, who are out there playing great minutes, and not every team has that. And just last thought before we move on, unless you guys got anything else about this game, but the boy, you brought up last week how this UConn team is different from last year's. Like, they lost so many guys to the draft and just kind of graduated, and it's an amazing accomplishment that they were able to go back-to-back with a different team, because the Florida team, the last 2 teams went back-to-back. Duke in the early 90s with Grant Hill and Christian Leitner, and the Florida team 06-07 had, like Joe Kimanoa, Al Horford, Corey Brewer, I think I'm missing one guy, but Billy Donovan, the coach. It was the same teams. They all came back for the next year to go back-to-back. This UConn team didn't return at nearly as much. They got different transfers coming in.
Yeah, 5 of 8 starters, or 5 of 8 top scorers.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yep. And so, that's going to be their same storyline next year. Believe it or not, they got guys, Cam Spencer, right, and Diarra, and Newton's going to be gone. Yeah,
Newton's gone.
Stephon Castle, you would think, is going to go because he's a lottery pick. So they're going to have to do. I heard Caravan's a draft pick. I don't know if Klingon will be back. I would think he would have a shot to play pro. So they'll have to try this again, all new set of guys, which you still think they can because of the coach.
At this point, why think anything different?
The players recruit themselves at this point, right? You go back to back in your 6th season as a UConn head coach, the talent's going to recruit itself.
Well, it's not just it's getting his guys.
Yes.
Right. He talked about in another interview. He talked about how he's passed on 5-star blue chip guys that are some one and dones, whatever. He's like, I need my guys, and look at where Spencer and Newton coming from nowhere. Yeah. I mean, they weren't even. I think
Spencer's
they were like
a
zero
graduate student too, so he's got a little.
I think Newton was too
on there.
Yeah, I think Newton was too, but they were JUCO transfers, but egoless, right?
Yeah,
I mean, they just want to win.
Grateful.
Yeah. And it's amazing. Komlo alluded to it. The final stat with these guys, they had the best point differential ever in an NCAA tournament, meaning when you take the points they scored, subtract the points that they gave up, their point differential was the largest ever in the history of the tournament, and it was by a lot. It was like a whole game's worth from the next closest. So it just pure dominance.
I think it was like 140 something to 120 something or something like that. Yeah, it's a lot of points.
Crazy. So congrats to UConn. Congrats to South Carolina.
Go Huskies.
Hope the party never stops. Now, that brings us to our next segment. This is going to be our other eye-catching events. So we just went through the top thing that caught our eye. Now we're moving on to other stuff that you may have missed over this past week, but that we noticed it caught our eye because we were still paying attention to it, and we thought it bore repeating because they were that cool. So first off, I'm going to start with the jersey I'm wearing, which if you can't tell or aren't watching, this
is that a
is
McDonough jersey?
Vintage '90s throwback Mark Messier
Yep.
jersey.
I got you that.
With the Statue of Liberty logo. So we're talking
jersey.
about my New York Rangers. And if you missed it from last week, the Rangers played their heated rival, the Devils, right across, the border in Newark over there. And they had a line brawl 2 seconds into the game. And for those of you who don't know what a line brawl is when every guy on the ice picks a partner, and they have ourselves a little Donnybrook, a little brouhaha, and they start fighting each other. And this happened the second the puck dropped. Boom! Everyone went at each other. And just a couple things on this. One, if you're not new to hockey, this is fairly rare. You maybe get one of these a year, right?
Yeah.
Two,
rules being what they are. Yeah.
Yes. Two, there was some previous incidents that kind of provoked this. So this wasn't just, these are our rivals, we don't like them. There were a couple incidents that provoked this. So Matt Rempe, 21-year-old forward for the New York Rangers, he is the embodiment, the reincarnation, if you will, of Dougie Glatt from Goon. That's his job out there. He's going to rough you up, he's going to get in a couple fights, and he's going to stand in front of the goal, and he's going to score a goal because the puck's going to bounce off his head into the net, right? So he, in the last 2 meetings against the Devils, got himself tossed from the game. The first time in February 22nd, he got a match penalty for elbowing a Devils player, got tossed, right? The next game, right? They're trying to look for that answer, want him to answer the bell, right? Fight their enforcer. We're going to go one for one. We're going to police ourselves. We're not going to tolerate this. So the next game's in March. Doesn't go for the fight, but he gets himself tossed because he takes a shot at another Devils player. He doesn't get tossed for that, but the enforcer for the Devils goes after him, and the refs decide, all right, this is just going to devolve into something crazy. We're going to toss them both out. McDermott was his name for the Devils, right? Mm-hmm. So those two things happen. So the next time they're playing them, the Devils are the away team, right? They're playing at Madison Square Garden against the Rangers. As the away team, you get to set your starting lineup first. You get first change, right? So the coach of the Devils, I believe his name is Travis Green, sent out his enforcers, his goons, his toughest dudes out there. So Peter Laviolette, the coach of the Rangers, has got two options. He can send his normal starting lineup out there and risk that these guys are all going to fight his best players and get your Artemi Panarins, your Mika Zibanejads, your Chris Kreider's injured. Or I can counter his goons with my goons in case something happens like this. And sure enough, puck drops, and here we go, boys. Pitter patter, let's get at her. They just start going. Fight. Second fastest fight ever. And
Caps have the first one.
It resulted in 8 ejections. So basically, the officials threw out four of the groups that were fighting. One group stayed, but eventually, in the course of that quarter, they ejected another player for the Devils. So 5 for the Devils got tossed in the first period. 4 from the Rangers tossed in the first period. And it was a good old-fashioned fight, and again, it had some history to it. Not to be outdone, though. Third period, Rangers were down a goal. Came back to tie it right at the end. Took the lead and won. It was their league-leading 13th third period comeback this year. So the Rangers took that win. I believe it was 4-3. But I thought that was, if you didn't see it, it was pretty awesome. You're not going to see many fights like that. Go do yourself a favor, check it out. The Rangers-Devils line brawl. You guys got anything else on that one?
I got a couple things with that, actually, if you don't mind.
Yep.
One, I just think it's super refreshing in an era where players are traded back and forth and all around the leagues. Not just hockey, but any sport, really, where you still see systemic organizational hate. Because this rivalry goes way back, and the King, Henrik Lundqvist, was on the desk with Anson Carter and the boys pregame, and he knew something was going to happen.
Yeah,
because he's sitting there, and like, I think it's probably the first time. Like, usually Hank is cool, calm, reasonable, and handsome.
He's always handsome.
He's always handsome.
This dude starts talking about a time when Torts put out the goon line against the Devils way back in the day, and Hank starts like slapping the desk and flexing. I thought he was gonna rip right through his tailored suit. Holy, it was awesome. I was like, yeah, Hank, let's go, Hank. But he knew something was happening, and I just think it's super refreshing that you see like team rivalries like this in an era where players are getting traded back and forth, and it's not uncommon to get traded to a rival, right?
Yep.
I think something like that is awesome. I love it. And I love a good line brawl. Yes. The only thing that would have made it better is the goalies getting involved.
Agreed. And I think Shesterkin, the Rangers goalie, looked like he kind of wanted to get into it.
Which probably would have been a mistake for Igor, but
yes, because of how well he's been playing too.
He's so good. But
yeah.
I mean, the rules of hockey being what they are, something like this, you're absolutely right, Nick. I think it's very rare that you get one of these in a season because of what the league has done to fighting. Yeah. You can't take your helmet off anymore. You can't unbuckle the strap. Like, you essentially just have to punch the helmet and cut your hand open and hope that it falls off during the course of the fight. But yeah, I love that. That's a great take, Nick. Great take.
Yeah. Now, moving on from a sport with history of some gratuitous violence to a sport with very little, and that is golf. Right. Over this past weekend, we had 2 concurrent tournaments. You had the Valero Texas Open on the PGA Tour, and you had Live Golf Miami at Doral on the Live Golf circuit. Each tournament went to a playoff at the end, and they were both happening at the same time. So the Valero Texas Open, you had Akshay Bhatia, lefty, big lanky dude, looking for his second win. His first win came last year, but it happened the same time as the British Open, so it really didn't qualify him for anything. So he's looking to get qualified and exempt for some of these things. He's squaring off against Denny McCarthy from
no idea.
Virginia.
Virginia? Oh.
Yes.
When he points, you say Virginia.
Duh. Denny McCarthy from
Virginia. Are we only doing Virginia sports players?
Well, when he points,
if someone else notable shows up, I'll let you know. But no, he pulls out his book, and he's got the UVA logo on the back of his book that he's using for the greens and the fairways and stuff. So yeah, Denny McCarthy from Virginia. He's from outside of DC.
So he's a nerd.
It's either Silver Spring or Chevy Chase, Maryland. I forget which one he's from. But yeah, Denny McCarthy.
Catching strays like that, dude.
No, Denny doesn't deserve that.
No,
Denny made an incredible charge on the back nine. I don't know if you saw. He birdied 8 of the final 9. He almost went a whole half round of golf birdieing it. So he shot 8 under on the final 9 to force the playoff. Bhatia actually had to sink his birdie putt on the last hole to match Denny's score at 20 under to force the playoff. They get to the first playoff hole. An interesting development. Akshay calls for the trainer because in his celebration, when he's pumping his fist, his shoulder slips out a little bit, and he has to push it back in. So he's asking for the trainer in the middle of the fairway while Denny's lining up his approach shot on 18, which is a 600-plus yard hole with like a kind of creek winding through it, like beautiful setup. So this is Denny's third shot because you have to lay up to it. He's got to hit it over the creek onto the green. Did it perfectly, 10, 15 minutes before. But Denny chunks this and knew it right away, right into the drink. Right, sets up Bhatia even with the bad shoulder, gets up there and was able to could 3-putt for the win. A couple putts, taps in, and that, Denny was seeking, I think, his first win in 174, 175 starts on the PGA Tour. He was real close last year, lost in a playoff to Victor Hovland. So that kind of stung, but he's...
Augusta.
Well, no, Denny had already earned his trip to Augusta. Denny's ranked in the top 50 in the world. He'll be in Augusta, but Akshay earned the final spot because he had not made it there. Ranking wasn't high enough. His win last year didn't count, so he earned the final spot. Going into the weekend, it was, we got 88 people playing in the Masters. False. We now have 89 because Akshay Bhatia sunk his putts on that first playoff hole and came out with the win. So congrats to him. That was awesome to see. And speaking about the Masters, like we said, in the Live Golf event, there was a playoff going on between former Masters champion Sergio Garcia and South Africa's Dean Burmester. And they're playing the 18th again. And at the same time Denny chunked his approach into the water, Sergio did the same thing. Came up short in his approach on that final hole.
Brand.
Burmester just flips it up there, safely, putts it in for the win. So it was kind of amazing to see those two playoffs going back-to-back. Or back and forth like that.
Did you guys see Sergio personally put it into the water at a previous Live event?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
Twice.
Yes, we did. Live Golf DC last year. We started watching. We were at the hole where Sergio started. So I forget. It was Sergio, and there were a couple other guys that were we want to see. I think Louis Oosthuizen might have been in that group. And Sergio goes off first. They start the music. Everyone's, getting going. And poop, right in the water. Wasn't even close. It was like, one of us shanked, like a pole shank, like not even close to the hole. And it did not go well for him the rest of that day. But Sergio has now been in 3 playoffs at LIV. He is 0 for 3 in playoffs for LIV.
Not built for kind of amazing. I see.
Washed.
Well, we got the Masters coming up. He was able to take care of business 2017, so let's see how he does. Again, maybe this will kind of piss him off and give him a little more motivation.
Maybe the Spanish tapas at the what's it called? The dinner.
Don't.
Yep. John Rahm's cultural
We're
buffet
not getting
of
into Masters menu.
Brilliance.
We're not getting into the Masters menu.
No, we're not. We're not, because we're going to move on. We're going to move on to baseball as our next thing. And last week we saw our first no-hitter of the year. Ronel Blanco for the Houston Astros pitched a no-hitter in his 8th career start. Amazingly, he's 30 years old, from the Dominican Republic, and had much action up in the show. But 8th career start, the Astros were defeated up to that point. They hadn't won a game. They're playing the Blue Jays, who are supposed to have one of the best offenses, right? And no hits them, only gives up 2 walks, 7 strikeouts, and his 2 walks were the same person, George Springer. He walked the second batter of the game. Then he retired, I think, like 26 straight guys, basically, till he walked Springer in the 9th inning. So that's the only blemishes, where he walked Springer twice. No one else could touch him. Well, obviously no one touched him, and no one had any, real good at-bats. He dominated them with his changeup, which he really hadn't used much in previous starts. And he parlayed that into, on Sunday night, facing the defending World Series champion Rangers. He started that game with 5 2/3 no-hit innings. So he started the year with 13 2/3, 9 plus 4, 14 2/3 no-hit innings. And it's the longest streak to start a season in the last 50 years of no-hit ball. So pretty amazing, Ronel Blanco.
Because I think 13 2/3 is 9 plus 4.
Yes.
You said 14.
Yes, he pitched 5 2/3, so it's 4. It's
oh, sorry, 5 2/3.
It's 14 2/3 innings.
There you go. Okay.
Yep.
Just wanted to make sure.
You're both right, really. If you talk math.
Yep. More baseball stuff for us. There was some wild walk-offs this past week. The O's, Komlo, your O's, walked off the Royals on Wednesday, scored 2 in the 8th and 2 in the 9th to walk them off, and it was their second walk-off win of that series against Kansas City. Not to be outdone, on Friday the Rockies had another crazy walk-off. They gave up 5 runs in the top half of the 9th to the Rays to go down. Right.
That's wild.
Then they hit a walk-off grand slam in the bottom of the 9th to win. Right, so give up 5, we'll score 4, we'll take the victory. Right, always love a walk-off grand slam. Oh, it's probably awesome.
It has to be insane.
And then going back to your O's, Komlo, they have those 2 walk-offs against the Royals, but then they give up 2 walk-offs in a row to the Pirates, the steaming hot Pirates. First walk-off was O'Neal Cruz, who is, if you haven't seen him yet, freaking stud.
Cruz missile.
Yeah, he singled to right field, scoring the winning run in the first walk-off. The second walk-off, your boy Gunnar Henderson is trying to make a fantastic double play. Diving stop, gets up, gets to the bag, gets up to try to throw the runner out at first, airmails it. The winning run comes around to score because he throws it into the stands. So those were your couple cool walk-offs from the week. Komlo, your O's getting mentions. They have not.
Love to see it.
They've picked up where they left off, to be honest. So
yeah.
So there's your
Santander's tied for first in RBI.
In the second
which was
game
your
of
hot
that,
take.
In the second game of that Pirates series, they got out of a dicey situation where they had a reliever come in with bases loaded, no outs, and force out at home, and then a couple of other key outs to get out of extra innings. I think it was out of the 10th inning with bases loaded. It was awesome.
Yeah. Now moving on, we're going to go to the world of soccer over the pond. If you want to, if you will, that'll be called football or football over there.
Two halves. But first thing, in the Premier League, the aforementioned 2 halves Premier League,
we had Chelsea playing Manchester United in the middle of the week, an odd kind of midweek game because you don't see that all the time. You normally see, your Saturday, maybe a Tuesday, but you're normally playing Saturday or Sunday. We got a midweek game. Those are always interesting, but Chelsea prevailed over Manchester United in a wild finish. So Chelsea goes up 2-0, right? Kind of dominating United. United's got nothing going. United somehow, out of nowhere, takes the lead. They score 3 unanswered. They go up 3-2. And now we're sitting here saying, wow, what a collapse by Chelsea. Well, a trend in international soccer is they're going to play the full 90 minutes. So as Komlo knows, before when you had stoppage time, at most you would see 5 minutes, regardless of what happened during the game, regardless of the injuries, regardless of the cards, the dissension amongst players and coaches. You were only going to see 5 minutes added at the most, right? Well, now there's been a push to make it so we're playing the whole 90 minutes. So if you want to sit there and you want to waste 7 minutes, go right ahead because we're going to add that on. We're going to actually play it. You're not going to get that advantage. We're going to play the whole 90 minutes. So in this game, stoppage time went to double digits. So we got United up 3-2. 10th minute of stoppage time, Chelsea draws a penalty in the box. So Cole Palmer, who's already dropped one in the net, comes up to take the penalty. Cool finish. Easy game. We're tied, right? They're thinking, all right, we're going to take this draw. We're going to go home with some happiness if I'm a Manchester United fan. Maybe some disappointment, but not full disappointment. Well, fast forward 1 minute. In the 11th minute of stoppage time, Cole Palmer again takes a short corner for whatever reason is unmarked, and knowing that the clock is ticking down, he fires one right into the box, thinking, what's the worst thing can happen? It drills a Manchester United player who really couldn't get out of the way, goes right to the back of the net for the game-winning goal, 4-3 at the death. It is the latest winning goal in Premier League history. So, when Cole Palmer with the hat trick.
It's an impressive sequence of events, but with this push to keep games at a full 90 or get games back to a full 90, I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing goals later.
Yeah,
that's
no,
really
I agree.
The only take I have there.
Because you're going to see guys, tired legs, that we talked about with Zaki, the tired legs. It looked like tired legs. There was no reason for Palmer to just be standing there unmarked. He was kind of surprised he got the ball. Yeah. And United didn't know what to do because they were, you've been out there for 100 minutes plus, right? So thought that was an amazing soccer finish. The other soccer news, I don't know if you're keeping up with your Bundesliga this year, but Bayer Leverkusen, not Bayern, but Bayer Leverkusen, they're unbeaten this year. They have not lost a game the entire year. Their record is 24 wins, 4 draws, and 0 losses, which is insane.
Impressive.
Right? They, over the weekend, had a 1-0 victory over Union Berlin, and that victory put them 16 points clear of Bayern Munich, the normal powers, and Stuttgart, and it put Bayer Leverkusen 1 win away from already clinching the Bundesliga title this year. And we talked about what an accomplishment the South Carolina women going undefeated was. Leverkusen should probably get some props that they're not getting because that's insane. South Carolina, what was it, 38-0, 37-0, and look at them, they're 28 matches in and they haven't dropped a game in a sport that you would argue is harder to do because there's so many different random variables. You can get a random goal bounce and that's your one loss. And to go 28 matches this way through the start of a season unbeaten is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's impressive, that's for sure. Especially for a club that's traditionally middle of the pack,
yes.
not failing, not getting relegated, and not showing off.
Yeah, they're like the Tennessee Titans of the
Bundesliga. Part of the
Bundesliga.
curve.
Yeah, it's impressive for that club. If you had said BVB Dortmund or Bayern Munich was doing that, I don't think anyone would bat an eye. But that's impressive.
Yeah, or like a PSG in League One. You expect that, but you're right. Leverkusen, this is like a dream season, probably best they'll ever have. I think that deserves more attention, to be honest. Last part of our eye-catching stuff, going back to basketball, right? The Basketball Hall of Fame class was announced over the weekend, or this past week.
Ooh, I didn't see this.
For those of you who don't know, the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame is different from the other sports Hall of Fames, where you go to the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, it's only for accomplishments in Major League Baseball. So, like the Japanese home run king Sadaharu O isn't in our Hall of Fame, right? He'll be in the Japanese Hall of Fame. But the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame is for all of basketball, all levels across the world. So you've got guys you might sit there and go, is he really a Hall of Famer? But when you look at their accomplishment and their mark on the whole of basketball, that's why they're there. So first, your boy Jerry West from
West Virginia.
West by God.
Ooh.
Jerry West is getting inducted for the third time. He's in there as a player. He's in there as a member of an Olympic team. And now he's going to be...
it's an owner and a contributor, right?
Yeah, so now he's going to be in there as a contributor for his work with the Lakers.
Or general manager, not owner.
Yeah, front office, general manager, advisor. He'll be in there for the third time. I think he's the only person in there 3 times, which is pretty amazing.
He's the logo, man. He's the logo for a reason.
He is the logo. If you didn't know that, he's the logo of the NBA, Jerry West.
There's a nice statue outside of West Virginia Coliseum. If you've never been, go see it.
There'll be some people that'll vote no just because he doesn't need to be in there 3 times, but that's impressive.
Yes.
Good for him.
Yep. I mean, who's it in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Is it Eric Clapton or Peter Frampton? One of them is in 3 times. That's like the record. I might need to fact check that. Who was in Cream?
Efforting.
Whoever was in Cream.
Keep going. I'll interject.
Okay. Player-wise, the headliners for this class, you had Chauncey Billups, who, I love. He was fantastic as a player. Vinsanity Vince Carter, who,
awesome.
He made... I mean, not that dunking wasn't cool before, but he made dunking cool for our generation. Like, he made it, like, stuff he wanted to emulate. Like, I remember us sitting in the street trying to do his elbow in the rim and trying to do the reverse 360 that he had that you spin away, like the opposite.
On a 6-foot hoop.
Alley-oop, yeah. Well, it might have been 8. Might have been 8. Let's go with 8. They got in Simone Augustus from the women's side, one of the great players. She got in. And coach-wise... I'm surprised you didn't see this or didn't know. Bo Ryan from
Wisconsin.
From Wisconsin, Bo Ryan finally got his due.
Back-to-back Final Fours.
Yep, back-to-back Final Fours. Got jobbed in that championship game, which we do not have time to get into that because that is you talked about a Scotch-fueled anger. Mm-hmm. That is a whiskey Scotch-fueled anger for that championship game against Duke. But Bo Ryan, fantastic coach at Wisconsin. Very well deserved for him getting the Hall of Fame. I thought that was pretty cool. Those were headliners of the class. And the other college basketball news just happened yesterday. John Calipari, much maligned for some reasons at Kentucky, stayed in conference to leave Kentucky to go to Arkansas, which is a very fascinating move. Can't say I saw that coming. If you think about it, it makes sense, right? He's going from a place where he even said this. They need a new voice. He overstayed his welcome, basically. At Kentucky, you got to claim championships. You can't have first-round losses to the Oaklands of the world. Doesn't matter how good Jack Golke is, draining ridiculous threes. You just can't lose games like that at Kentucky, right? You're different. You're at a different standard. And so he probably is like, I don't need this anymore. I've won national championships. His career winning percentage is something crazy, like 750. So I don't need this anymore. So maybe look for a change of direction. He goes to a place like Arkansas, who has had great success under Eric Musselman, who he left to take the job at USC, which I thought was an interesting move, too. I don't know why you would want to do that, but he leaves to go there, and Calipari's probably thinking, well, you know what? I'm still in the same conference. I know all the other coaches and the opponents, so my scouting reports are going to be pretty the same. I'm not really starting over from scratch in terms of continuity and comfort. But I'm going to a place where, if I win a couple games in the tournament, I'm revered. Whereas if I don't win a championship in Kentucky, I'm reviled. So I bet he's looking at that as like just pressure. Wait, like I don't need this anymore. So I thought that was kind of weird.
It's win-win switch.
I wouldn't necessarily say low maintenance. Arkansas's had success. It's not like he's taken over.
It would have been had he gone somewhere else. Like you said, not having to really worry about your scouting reports, I think, is a big deal. I think that makes it a lower maintenance.
Well, he just knows the league. It's comforting, right? I wouldn't say it's low maintenance because it's not like Arkansas is a bad program. I think Musselman took them before this year. This was like their worst year, but before that, they'd gone to 3 straight Sweet 16s, if I'm not mistaken.
I think they went to an Elite 8 as well.
Yeah. So he had done great things there. I think in the early '90s, Nolan Richardson, I believe, was the coach. I want to say they might have had a national championship. It's either that or they definitely went to the Final Four. But they had some success there. But they're not like traditional power. You're not thinking of them as Kentucky or Kansas or UNC, right? So to your point, Komlo, the maintenance, the stress, the pressure is different. It's still the SEC. Still, you're expected to win, but it's not like Kentucky. So thought that was interesting because he's taking a pay cut too.
I'm sure.
I mean, not that much of a pay cut, but he's still taking a pay cut. So
yeah, in '94 they beat Duke for the national championship.
Yep.
Clapton's in there 3 times, by the way.
Clapton, yeah, that's okay. Yep, that's
singer, songwriter, guitarist.
Yeah, yep. So Jerry West is the Eric Clapton of basketball.
Switch loose.
Soon to be. He's not in for the 3rd time yet.
Now, before we get on to our top individual performances of the week, do you guys have anything else that caught your eye that we might have missed?
The A's. The once proud franchise reduced to a laughing stock.
The E's.
All for the glorification of their owner's massive ego. Moving to Sacramento. What?
So is that finalized?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're going. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure they're going there for the next 3 years before Vegas opens.
Yeah,
is that what it is? I wasn't.
Yeah, and the owner.
I was looking at that a lot.
I don't know. I just thought it was hilarious. The owners like giving their pitch, like it's gonna be a more intimate experience at this minor league park, and you're gonna get to see Aaron Judge come in here and hit home runs.
Is that what he said?
Yes, that's what he said.
Oh,
they're the
what
Phoenix Coyotes of baseball. They're moving to a smaller stadium because they just honestly they can't justify temporarily going to a bigger stadium.
Well, this is what they get for not putting Barry Zito and Tim Hudson in Moneyball.
Yeah, that's
was Mark Mulder in it? Did he?
Or Mark Mulder? Yeah, no, I don't think he was in it. I don't think any of them were in it.
No, well,
it's all Brad Pitt
was in it.
Yeah, Brad Pitt was in it.
I fucking love that movie.
Chris Pratt was in it.
Love that movie.
Yeah. Komlo, anything from your end
story, though,
that we might have missed?
Things we missed. Yes. One of them expands off of something we talked about last week in the realm of golf. Anyone want to take a guess?
Is it spotting Trump at his own course during Live?
No, it's better. It's better. Nelly Korda makes it 4 in a row.
Did she really?
She won the Arizona Championship. Nelly Korda goes 4P.
Was that the match play or was that the?
No, it was stroke play.
It was stroke play. That's holy crap! I missed that.
Nelly Korda goes 4 straight, winning the Arizona Championship.
Wow, because that was a strong field too. They had all the heavy hitters in that, like Fouraway and Boutier was in there. Corpuz.
Yeah.
They were all in there. They had the heavy hitters.
She is playing
Leona
just
McGuire.
Some of the best golf ever. I think she won with a score of -6 overall at the Arizona Championship. And then sticking with golf for my last thing about things that we probably missed. Like I said early on, I watched a lot of golf this weekend. The Women's Amateur Championship wrapped up this weekend. And for those of you that don't know, they play the first 2 rounds at one club, break, travel, and they play the final round at Augusta National in Augusta, Georgia. Huge deal. They make a whole song and dance out of it. A lot of people will tell you that it's like a practice round for the superintendents and everyone at Augusta to host the Masters this coming weekend. But I watched this round and it was awesome. So the leader of the pack, Lottie Wode, was kind of coasting for a little bit. And she was looking strong, but Bailey Shoemaker comes out and she shoots a 66 at Augusta, loses by 1 stroke in the finals to Lottie Wode. But it was an amazing sight, and you could tell that it just wasn't something they were counting on because they kept throwing it to Bailey Shoemaker's group because she's just birdie putt after birdie putt after birdie putt. Her scorecard looks immaculate. And then just one more little segue off of that, I'm going to let you guys and our listeners in on this fun little life hack that I plan on exploiting next year. Tips, it's a benefit for getting in early. So I don't know about you guys, but I've been putting in for the Masters Championship lottery every year for like 8 years now. I know people that have been putting in for 15 years and have never gotten called. If your goal is to just get to Augusta, put in for the Women's Amateur Championship. A guy that I work with, he said that his buddy put in for it this year, got it first year. Awesome. And so he got to go and watch this round at Augusta, which I think is just incredible. So, life hack for you guys, my friends, and our fellow listeners and gazers out there, put in for the lottery system for the Women's Amateur Championship.
I love it.
And that's all I got there.
I love it. I love it. That moves us on to our new segment we have here on our top performances of the week. We're going to kind of highlight and look at some of the individual performances that may have gotten lost in the shuffle. Some record setting, maybe something that stood out to us, maybe kind of oddities that you just may never seen before. So my first one this week was Austin Matthews, the great forward for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He set the single season Leafs record for goals with his 61st goal. And as of Sunday, he had 64 in the year. He had reached the 100-point plateau. If you don't know Austin Matthews, he's probably our best American hockey player. I don't know who else I would put above him in terms of Americans, but Austin Matthews is phenomenal. But in America, I feel like we don't see or hear about him a lot because he's on Canada's team. It's weird to watch our best American roll out there with a maple leaf on his chest. But Austin Matthews, 100 points, at least 64 goals for this year. Leafs record.
65.
He's over 65 now?
Last person to do that was Alexander Ovechkin, Joe B.
Was he? Wow, Johnny on the spot. More from him in a second. Next on that end, I got Bryce Harper. I don't know if you saw this. Bryce Harper, in the middle of the week, I think it was on Tuesday, against the Reds, hit 3 home runs, 6 RBI, in horrible weather conditions. The feels like temperature at this game, I think, was 41. It was drizzling. And as anyone who's ever hit and played baseball in those conditions, it sucks. They'll talk about a lot how hard to get a grip on the ball and all this stuff. But hitting is also pretty horrendous because it's so hard. You're so cold, right? You're talking about a sport that's fairly stagnant. You're moving, but you're not like adrenaline pumping, right, the whole time. So you're trying to get feeling in your fingers. You're trying to get comfortable in the box. He throws a nasty one that you can't react to as well and comes off the wrong part of the bat. You're done, right? So Harper, his third home run was lefty on lefty, and he took a sinker down out of the zone that he kind of took a big cut at and fouled it off with the bases loaded. And I believe Ron Darling was the announcer and kind of said something to the effect of like, you may not want to go back there again. Pitcher throws the same pitch in the same spot, and this thing is about this much out of the strike zone, right? So it's not like this is down the middle, and he hammers this grand slam for his third home run in these just terrible conditions. So I thought that was crazy. Again, as someone who's tried to hit a baseball that's going pretty hard in those, it sucks. I can't imagine being able to, 3 dingers and 6 ribbies, but that's what Harper did on Tuesday. Another baseball note, on Wednesday, Kyle Higashioka, former Yankees great, who was just traded to the Padres over the offseason as part of the Juan Soto trade. He's a catcher. He became the first catcher in about 25 years to throw out 2 base runners in 1 inning and hit a home run in that same inning. So top of the inning, guns out 2 guys to end the inning, comes up in the bottom half, drills his first Padres home run. I got $100. I will go out after this show tomorrow or some point this week, and I will get a crisp $100 bill if you can tell me who the last catcher was to do this.
Yadier. It's not Yadier.
It's not Yadier. You are as close as you could possibly be.
Jose.
Name that Molina.
Benji.
It is Benji Molina.
Benji Molina, the third Molina.
The third Molina. The lesser Molina defensively. Name that Molina.
That's the title of this episode, by the way. Is the third.
Do I get $50 for getting half?
Hell no. This is
33 for.
Yeah. This isn't like Kramer trying to get a non-hello greeting at the bank, and they give him $20. No, you didn't get it.
Start with an H, so.
Yeah. Benji Molina against the Devil Rays.
It ended with Molina.
Yeah, come on. Give me something for that. I think that's pretty good.
It ended with, that's $20 down. It ended with Molina.
Deal.
All right.
Oh, that's awesome. Good guess, Stevie.
And the Padres went on to win, by the way. So his home run was the difference, 3-2 victory. So we got a Molina reference, so that made the whole show. Next up, basketball, NBA, the Pistons, who are just dreadful. They are the only team that's worse than the Zards, which is saying a lot. Which just dreadful. But Malachi Flynn of the Pistons came off the bench and scored 5-0 off the bench. They, of course, lost the game because that's really all they do. Man, they're pretty sad. But Malachi Flynn, 50 off the bench is pretty amazing. Did that middle of this week. And my last one, unless you guys have anything, Ovi, Alexander Ovechkin, the grade 8. He surpassed 850 career goals on Friday, scored 2 in a loss to the Carolina Hurricanes. He, last time I checked, is at 851. So still...
He just scored about 15 minutes ago against the Red Wings.
852? Is that our tally? 852, so that puts him, Gretzky's 894? Is that what Gretzky is?
He's less than 40 away now. I think he's 39 away now.
That's not right. He's 42 away.
You sure?
94 minus 52?
No, I think your numbers might be wrong, though, because I thought I saw a graphic that the Caps put out that said he was 40 away earlier this week.
Put him at 42 away if he's at 852. If Gretzky's 894, maybe Gretzky's 892. If Gretzky's 892, then we're at 40. But, yeah, so he's creeping on that. He's getting to the point where he could do it next year.
You're right, he's 42 away. That's
42 away. He's at 30 goals this year, which is a drop-off from what we're used to seeing from him. So, theoretically, he could get this done next year to break Gretzky's record, which would be insane.
Yeah.
You guys got any other personal favorite performances that you saw this week?
I do. It's not necessarily performance. It ends up being a team performance, but J.J. Weatherholt on my West Virginia Mountaineer baseball team. If you don't know who he is the projected number 1 pick in the MLB draft this year. This dude's an absolute stud. He's been hurt all year with a hamstring injury that he suffered playing with Team USA over the summer and then re-injured it in the first series. So he's been out for like 25 games. He comes back. They sweep Kansas in Kansas. West Virginia is now first in the Big 12 in baseball, which is pretty good. There's still some big-time teams in Big 12 baseball. But his numbers from last year, J.J. Weatherholt hit .449, which led the nation.
Is that good?
His OPS was 1.3. He had 16 home runs, 60 ribbies, 35 stolen bases. He switched from second base to shortstop this year. I think the only knock on him is arm strength, but he'll probably project as a second baseman. Lefty at the plate, he is an absolute stud. I mean, power to all fields. Like, he's the real deal.
That's why he's our shortstop. That's why he's our shortstop.
That's why he's our shortstop.
Again, is that good?
Yeah, those numbers are stupid.
That's incredible.
He had a press conference earlier, like to preview the year, and people were asking him, like, all right, well, people are going to obviously pitch around you and stuff. He's like, yeah, not worried about it. We got some other hitters, but at the end of the day, these are college pitchers. They have to come to me, and I'm not missing. And I was like, oh, this dude knows what he's doing.
Yeah,
onions.
Mic drop moment right there. That's huge.
Yeah,
that's awesome. I like that one.
I like it. I like the plug. And that brings us to our final segment of the night. So earlier this week, I asked my esteemed colleagues, the boy and the man, Komlo, to think about, kind of reflect on what we're doing here. Why did we get into this? Why did we decide to take on this venture and do a podcast and do all the stuff that goes with this? And I wanted us three to individually think about our inspirations, our influences, our role models in this realm. So looking at guys who host things, who are announcers, who are the regular people of the sporting world, right? Not your guys who played, not your A-Rods, not your Derek Jeters, not your guys who were out on the field, who are the studs, who parlayed that into a broadcasting job, but the people who, had this vision and this passion to get into this and start talking and being the voice and the person at home that you hear. and to connect with the individuals like us on a daily basis from the sports world. So I had us kind of jot down. I didn't give them a set number. I didn't say you have to come up with 5. I didn't say you had to come up with 10. Just talking about the people that influenced you the most. So I have my list. I can start if you guys would
kick us off, big
would like
guy.
me to. So, in really no particular order, I have Dan Patrick, Stuart Scott, the late great Stuart Scott, Robert Flores, Roflo.
Ooh,
love me some Roflo.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
I believe he was named that Molina, and
I think he was. Yeah.
And my favorite one that he had, if you remember, So Taguchi played for a Japanese player.
Oh,
played
that is So Taguchi. Yep.
Played for the Cardinals. I think he would always say, "Well, that is so Taguchi," as Taguchi would, do something to highlight. Roflo, I got Scott Van Pelt, Shaz Bagel, Greg Amsinger of the MLB Network. Love him. I think he does a fantastic job, night in, night out, hosting MLB Tonight and doing all the other stuff that he does. And a couple old ones here. Mike Tirico, who I think is the most underrated. He can do literally anything. Any sport, any time, any day, any location. Mike Tirico is your man. And Chris Berman. And because he really...
You got to give it up for the Swami.
Yeah, to me, he's what made it fun. He made it different, right? Obviously, some of the other guys, the sounds, the nicknames, the Daylight Come, you got a Delome, things like that. in his back on the home run derby, it just iconic, and it's that's just stuck with me my whole life. And one wild card, not sports related, but someone who is a host on radio, Elliot in the Morning, EITM. I love him, and just shout out to him.
Yeah.
And his crew in the show. It just every day he's unapologetically him. There is no pretense about what he does. He's going to tell you what he thinks, and he's going to do it. And if you don't like it, you don't like it, and he's okay with that. And that's admirable, especially in today's world where people, are so afraid to ever tell a truth. They're so afraid to say something. He's going to be
self-dubbed president of radio DJs.
Yeah, and I think he got inducted into the Radio Hall of Fame or DJ Hall of Fame, something like that last year,
probably,
or the year before. So those are my guys.
Great list.
Yeah,
great list.
Who wants to go next, boy? Let's save Komlo for last. Boy.
Okay. Dan Patrick, obviously, to me he's the gold standard. I mean, I've been listening to his show for every day. I would say probably for the last 8 years, and then obviously we grew up watching him on SportsCenter, and he was one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to do this.
He took a gamble.
Yeah, he did take a gamble, and he's also a great actor.
Shout out Sandman.
Yeah, Jason Benetti. He's the Chicago White Sox play-by-play, but he does everything. I think he is also extremely underrated.
Agreed.
He's one of those guys where he's so good you don't even notice him.
I agree
he's that good. Gary Thorne.
Yes.
Just the old hockey days. I don't know why that voice always just rings in my ear. I love Gary
Thorne and Bill Clement here on the call, and the video game, Wednesday night hockey on ESPN. Oh man, Gary Thorne. And is he still the voice of your O's, Komlo?
He is.
Love it.
Him and Jim Palmer.
Yeah, we can do without Jim Palmer. Love Gary Thorne.
My list.
Brent Musburger.
Ooh.
I think is so good. So funny. And, iconic voice of college football and AJ McCarron's girlfriend at the time.
Yep, it can't hold anything back now. Last game of the season. Can't hold anything back. And then Matt Vasgersian, Matty V. Mm-hmm.
He was the voice of the show for however many years that we used to play all the time.
Yes.
And he's awesome in MLB Network. He's one of my favorite announcers.
It's interesting, boy. Is that your last one?
That's my last one, yeah.
I had an extended list, and every single one of those people you mentioned is on my list. I chose to cut it down because I didn't want to. It was 16 people long. Had every single one of them on there.
It's almost like we grew up together.
You guys You guys have covered almost everyone on my list.
All right, let's hear Komlo.
All right. So first off, the first person when you told me to make this list, the first name that came to mind was SVP. Shout out Scott Van Pelt. I love what he does. I think you want to talk about a guy who's just unapologetically himself, owns what he does. He's a local DMV guy as well.
Yes, he is. From
Maryland.
Yeah, he's also throw curveball, pointing for a Maryland shout out. All right.
As much as we hate Maryland.
Yeah, I love Scotty. Love his commitment to the DMV. O's fan, big guy. I love him. Love Scotty.
Oh yeah, he's Bros, Strohs, and Natty Bows. Remember he used to say that during the highlights, and that inspired our longtime trivia team name, which was Bros, Hose, and Natty Bows.
Love it.
Because most people don't know
name.
what the O's are. Sorry.
Yeah.
And Stroh's is a horrendous malt liquor in line with like what Schlitz is.
It is.
In line with Schlitz, it's a horrendous malt liquor is Stroh's. So no one knows what that is, but Natty Bows. Oh yeah. That's the stuff.
love me some SVP. The second, I think you asked for this list while I was watching something basketball related. So I immediately thought Gene Steratore. Because this is a guy, and Stevie, we talked about this. This is a guy, like, the dude just has to sit around at home, watch the game. They'll call him up, be like, Gene, what do you think about this rule? And he goes, yeah, they broke a rule. And, like, that's pretty much it. And it's the easiest job, but he does it so well. Yes. The guy's versed, and he knows every rule to, like, every sport. I love that. I love that about it.
Yeah, another thing about Steratore before you move on, he was also an NFL official, which I think a lot of people might know him better for that. He was a fantastic official. Right? Don't forget that he was noticeably good because of the quality calls he would make. And the other thing he does so well, like you said, Komlo, you think that job is pretty simple. They call you up, you say something, right? But if you look at the other people around the world of sports who have that job, they can't do it as well as him. He is the gold standard if you talk about that, which is a pretty new, I don't want to say profession, but part of the broadcast. It's pretty new to have the rules analyst there. He's the best one by far.
And I think something that he does, and we saw this throughout the March Madness tournament, something that he does that I think a lot of people that are either on the desk or maybe getting similar calls that Gene gets, something he does that a lot of people don't do is, like, he'll get on the call, he'll say, yeah, you can clearly see the shift in the spin on the basketball there. It's UConn ball. I have the clock at 10.2 seconds. And then everyone's like, oh, that's probably what's taking so long, is they're trying to get the clock right. But Gene's on top of it. He knows. Gene knows. Coming in the 3-hole, I have Bob Costas. I think you gotta shout out Big Bob. You want to talk a guy who has just someone from the dog days, right? Someone that's been around for a very long time and has been doing it at such an excellent level. I think kind of like how Mike Tirico is kind of like underappreciated and undershouted out for his role. Bob Costas, I think, is probably the gold standard for like studio hosting, right? Because he does it for everything, and then he's the man on the ground for the Olympics too. Yeah. I love that for Bob. I have Gary Thorne on my list as well. Love me some Gary Thorne. And then I have Jim Palmer on mine as well, right there with Gary Thorne.
Jim Palmer doesn't count. He's a former player.
He's in the Hall of Fame as a baseball pitcher.
I count Jim Palmer. It's my list. Thank you. Moving on. Clearly, I'm not going to get any praise.
So calling a kangaroo court. This is a kangaroo court. I'm just going to call it kangaroo court.
And then
you might as well have the Philly Frenetic on there.
Yeah, the last person I'm going to shout out, tag team duo. Been listening to him for as long as I've been a fan, and I hope to keep listening to them. Gary Thorne and Craig Laughlin.
Joe B.
Yeah,
Joe
sorry. Not Gary Thorne. I was reading my list, and I saw Gary Thorne. Joe B. and Craig Laughlin. They've been doing it for over 25 years. I got to see them up in their skybox, not in person, but like from across the rink when I was at the game on Sunday. I just think they're an incredible duo and a great embodiment for what a team network announcer should be.
I like that.
No, I forgot to throw him on there. Doc Emmerich too. You got to shout out Doc Emmerich.
I like.
Shout out
good
Doc
save.
Emmerich.
Good save because
Shout
that
out
needs
Doc
to be.
Emmerich. I meant to put him in there, but I was worried about the typing next to the microphone. Doc Emmerich, he's goated, absolutely goated, and that's really all I got. That's my list right there.
That reminds. I was just looking at my full list. I think I might just rip through the ones I had. Doc Emmerich, or the ones that we didn't mention. Who bear mentioning? Doc Emmerich was on there. If you didn't say it, I was going to say him. I've got Vin Scully.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, good one.
Marv Albert. Joe Tessitore.
Oh, Tessitore. That's another underrated.
Yes. Kevin Harlan.
So good.
Yes, so good. Also on the so good level, Gus Johnson. So good.
He's got to get away from the cop's speed.
Yes. And then the last two, who are guys who have done everything, but you do think of them a lot when you hear golf, is Vern Lundquist and Jim Nantz. Hello, friends.
Yes.
Those were the other ones I had there on my list that we never got to. But I love it. Like
there's also one more, Brockmeyer.
Oh my goodness! How could we forget Brockmeyer?
That ball cannot be buried in a Jewish cemetery because it was tattooed.
Oh man, when I'm feeling down, I go on YouTube and I find just any clip from Brockmeyer, and it always makes me feel better.
It hits. It hits every time.
Yes, every time. But yeah, like I said, I wanted to do that segment because I wanted the listeners to know where we're coming from, who we have like kind of been influenced by, and who's inspired us and kind of molded and shaped our understanding of sports and communication, and how we want to go about this, how we want to communicate to the audience and to you guys. Anything else? While we're at the end of the show.
I have a couple rapid fires before we close out. NHL regular season is getting ready to wrap up, with most teams having 5 or 4 games left. Coming out of the East, you have a very, very tight 5-game playoff push for the last wildcard spot. You have the Islanders, Wings, Penguins, Capitals, and Flyers all within 2 points of each other. And the Penguins and the Flyers each have 78 to the other 3, 77. So it's going to be a very, very intense race, probably the most intense that, as a Capitals fan, I can remember in recent years. So I'll be watching a lot of hockey in the coming days. I've been getting updates from my brother for the Caps game that's going on right now because they're playing the Wings. It's must win.
Oh, boy.
And then last rapid fire is all eyes on Augusta National for a tradition unlike any other. Yes. You got the par 3 tournament that kicks off tomorrow, and then regular play, the first round kicks off Thursday morning. You have some really great featured groups coming out there. I personally like to post up, shout out Gina at work, with Amen Corner up on my laptop, and I'll watch all the groups come through Amen Corner. So all eyes on Augusta National for the Masters. First major of the year, baby. Let's go.
I love it. Took the words right out of my mouth, boy. Anything?
No, I mean, college basketball is done, so I shift my focus now to baseball, hockey, and then obviously Masters. So I've got some catching up to do with hockey.
I mean, that you guys took all the words right out of my mouth. I was going to end the show with talking about the Masters. We've reached Masters Week. If you were looking for one thing to catch your eye this coming week, it's the Masters at Augusta. Like Komlo said, a tradition unlike any other. It's the Wimbledon of golf, right? It's the one major that you grow up watching, and if you play those sports, that's the one you want because of just the traditions and the aura around it. So if you're looking for one thing out there to watch this week and this weekend, I'd say keep your eyes glued on Augusta and the Masters.
Recline that lazy boy, get a pimento cheese sandwich, and rest your eyes to the sounds of birds chirping over the azalea bushes, baby.
I love it. My azaleas just started blooming, and so I knew. I walked my boy out there earlier today. We're looking at the flowers, and I was like, you see that, son? Every year, when that happens, you know it's the Masters. So I love it. Love it. Hey, great show. That's going to do it for us, this edition of WCME. We really would like to send our sincerest gratitude and our thanks to all the people out there who have listened and watched and reached out to us. Reminder, follow us on Instagram and X at WCME_sports. Watch us on YouTube. Subscribe or ring the bell if you want alerts for when our latest episodes drop. And lastly, don't forget, if you want to take us on the go with you, give us a listen on Spotify, where our shows will drop every Wednesday. Right? Mm-hmm. For the boy, Stephen Vesci, the man, Stephen Komlo, I'm Nick Vesci. Be decent to each other. Have a good one. And we will see you next time.
Moi, moi, moi.